Hi everyone, happy Friday.
Hi, folks. Yeah, great. Happy Friday. Crazy to think that tomorrow is February. I don't know about you, but January seemed uh, incredibly long this year, or I guess it does every year. But yeah, crazy to think we are 1 month through the year, and hopefully, y'all had a great week.
Yes, I finally have to stop telling people Happy New Year. I think the window has finally closed on that.
Well, you should have stopped doing that about 4 weeks ago if you listen to Larry David.
Right. There are differing opinions. I
Yes.
kind of feel like all of January is within range, but unless I've seen you already, then I wouldn't tell you Happy New Year now. But regardless, the next time we see you, it'll be February.
Yes. Well, thank you to those that are joining in. And as usual, I'll just start off with a couple of deals. YouTube TV tweaked their deal. They're at, well, deal as they would call it, $69.99 for the first 6 months. This deal is running through the end of March. And so a savings of $78. Fubo is still with the $25 off Essential, making it $60 for the first month, and $20 off for Pro and Elite, making it those $64.99 and $74.99 respectively. And Sling, in addition to its typical half off, is all for the first month, is also offering AMC Plus for free for the first month, which is a $7 value. And not really a deal, but the DirecTV skinny bundle, My Sports, that we discussed 2 weeks ago, I think it was, just announced within the last hour that it's rolling that skinny bundle out to roughly an additional 100 cities nationwide. So taking it to, I think it was like 124 cities nationwide that's going to be available, including Omaha now finally. And so be looking for a review of that service here in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned Prime Video.
No, I didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to mention Prime Video. Just want to move into our first topic here. Just found this a little interesting. Prime Video is still trying to reach profitability. I don't know if that's because of all the money they spent getting Thursday Night Football. They've got a big hole to climb out of, but saw some reports this week about the fact that Prime Video views Netflix as its biggest rival, and that, shocker, Amazon is still prioritizing live sports content over original TV shows and movies to meet corporate profit goals.
Well, I wouldn't say still. I would say they're making a hard veer right towards.
I guess I said still
sports.
because they did already made that decision to invest so much money in the NFL, but they are making a hard pivot now. They want to leverage real-time viewership and targeted advertising opportunities that just are inherent to live sports events. They can sell those spots and make a lot of money there. Interesting to note that they spent, I'm just bringing this up, nearly $19 billion on content in 2023. And then they reduced that significantly to $7 billion in 2024. And the online publication The Information is reporting that Amazon's planning on keeping spending at those 2024 levels, if not even a little lower, as it seeks to become profitable. So they invest about $3 billion a year in sports broadcasting rights. That's how they've been able to secure those deals with the NFL and the NBA. It's notable that alongside ESPN and NBC Universal, they secured an 11-year broadcasting deal worth $77 billion with the NBA. And CEO Andy Jassy has said that he plans to make Prime Video profitable by the end of this year through that sports-centric strategy. They really believe that's going to attract them more viewers, I think, than they believe original content will, even though they did have some award-winning, pretty popular original series. The volume hasn't really been there, but they have produced some quality. I know myself, I've watched Rings of Power and enjoyed that. That was the most expensive show at the time that they made it. And there's been some other ones too that I'm unfortunately, assuming I won't see like a second season of as they make this shift. But really, and then if we also think about the fact that they added ads into Prime Video, it's just obviously a way for them to try to speed up that timeline to profitability that pretty much everyone in this space is chasing right now.
Yeah, and what will be interesting, given that they also got NBA. I know I've read. I'm not really a basketball fan, other than watching K-State games every once in a while. And NBA ratings are down pretty significantly from from previous seasons. So it'll be interesting to see what they're able to do once they get the NBA beginning next season. And yes, Raymond, I just read that Fire TV taking away that ability to hide apps that you don't want, and we're not really fans of that. We're primarily Roku right now. We still have Fire Stick, so we're gonna get in and look and see what that's like, and see if we need to do a video on that. And one of the problems with that is Amazon, like other platforms, installs bloatware that you don't want, so you've got to finagle your way through that stuff as well. So it'll be, hopefully they roll it back, but I don't believe that they will, because they're probably somehow getting compensated from the other services paying to get information, get into that.
Or we know that in the past they've really leaned in hard to pushing their own content. Yeah. And so this would be a really kind of a doubling down on that as well.
Yeah, and Lou, that's a great point about it'll be interesting to see what the next plan will be, because it is coming in. We're actually going to be discussing that here in a bit. Moving on from Prime Video, we discussed at length last fall about the Paramount Skydance merger. And as we discussed, that they came to the $8 billion agreement with Skydance, Paramount did. Well, this week it was reported that a new group had come forward known as Project Rise Partners with a $13.5 billion offer to purchase Paramount. And the consortium is made up of investors who had previously bid on Paramount. And they are claiming that it was done during what's called as the go shop period. It was in the headlines for a couple of days, but it appears that for right now that it's not really going to go anywhere. And in a statement to Deadline, Paramount said the transaction agreement between Paramount and Skydance Media enabled the special committee to pursue a superior proposal during the now expired 45-day go shop period, during which the representatives of the special committee contacted more than 50 third parties to determine whether they had an interest in making a proposal to acquire Paramount. Project Rise Partners did not make a proposal during such period, nor during the prior 7-month sale process for Paramount. It's unclear what Project Rise Partners' objectives are. However, Paramount is bound by its agreement with Skydance Media, and there will not be any engagement with the new agreement or with the new offer in contravention of such agreement. But what was also fascinating to see is it came out on Wednesday afternoon that the Employees Retirement System of Rhode Island has a lawsuit against Paramount, claiming related to the merger with Skydance, related to them claiming that the board of directors, that the board and Sherry Redstone did not act in the best interest of the shareholders. And that Sherry Redstone in particular, from everything I've read, basically was seeking a deal that would benefit her the most. Whether or not that's true, we obviously don't know yet, since we've not had the case yet, but it has been moved forward, and this retirement system out of Rhode Island isn't the only one that is upset about this. And so with the deal planned or slated to close the first half of 2025, it'll be fascinating to see what happens with this if Paramount and Skydance do close, and just given how linear TV is going and the number of linear networks that Paramount has, and that Paramount Plus isn't a behemoth in the streaming space, it'll be fascinating to see how this plays out and how this will affect us as streamers. So I've found that interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And so on to our next topic is kind of a continuation of a little bit what we were discussing at the start. And it's this question that we're asking is, can streaming continue to profit? So just taking a look at this chart here, we found this really interesting. So Netflix is profitable. We've talked about that. We just talked about Prime Video is seeking that this year. But Disney, Warner Brothers Discovery, Comcast, and Paramount all hit profitability for the first time last year. And this was really significant for them. Also, when you look at 2023 versus 2023 versus 2024, the combined profits for those was $142 million in 2023, and then in 2024 it was $5.9 billion for just the first, and that's just comparing the first 9 months of each of those years. So why is that happening? Well, there's enough subscribers now that they're able to make money off of that, enough of ads to those. Content budgets have shrunk, and then bundling has also helped bring in more subscribers. And we believe that they're gonna, as we've said before, continue to look for bundling opportunities this year, especially those like Disney, Warner Brothers, Comcast, Paramount. As they try to compete with Netflix, they're gonna look for ways to create bundles to do that. That's especially the case when you look at the fact that Netflix reported 20 million new subscribers in Q4 and almost $1.9 billion in profit. And so I think the question to us is like, can those large legacy players gain momentum to increase profitability, and can they do it quickly enough? An analyst,
which is really the key point, I think, the pace.
Yeah,
they can do it.
Yeah, so an analyst, Tim Nolan, categorized the improvements that those legacy players are seeing as progress, but he cautioned that even those streamers that have become profitable don't have enough profits to generate significant margins. So they're really not making enough money. Other than Netflix, this analyst is saying they're largely right around their break-even point. So in short, being profitable or becoming profitable isn't going to be enough. All those companies that we just mentioned, they really have to build profit at scale so they can continue to justify the cost of creating content. It's expensive. And that's interesting when you think that lots of us, streamers are trying to cut back on their entertainment budgets and spend less, and the prices keep going up. So where's that breaking point going to be? Again, another analyst through Yahoo Finance said that, Yahoo Finance reported this analyst saying that the bigger risk is really retaining the customer base and figuring out if we can get to that threshold where there's too many platforms. So again, this is not necessarily a new idea. I think we're just seeing it mature a little bit. We know everyone's not going to make it. Peacock is really struggling. They're not all going to be around forever. And so who's going to go in that, chase to profitability, like John mentioned, in that pace? And how's that going to impact us? Is your favorite go-to streaming service not going to be around? And if it goes under this year or next, then where do you get that content? Where is that content going to go? And is it going to be convenient for you? What's it going to cost? So just like underscores how much this industry is changing right now.
Yeah, it is. And I think over this next year to 18 months, we're really going to start to see some of that possible culling. Because if services aren't hitting the profitability levels that they want by the end of this year, I think we're going to start to see some reality coming into play and some pulling back. And especially as we are, as Paul is saying, as consumers are wanting to become more specific with our spending and more purposeful with our spending on streaming. And there was a great question a little earlier in the comments thread about who we think the top 5 streamers are end up going to be. I would say in no particular order. I would say Netflix, YouTube, and Disney are without question going to be 3 of those. I would assume Prime Video would be a player in there as well, especially given their channels and their ability to try and aggregate platforms. That 5th one, I'm not too certain on who I would say there. Yeah.
And that kind of, it's interesting, as John was listing off those companies, almost all of them are tech companies or backed by tech companies with really deep pockets. I mean, Disney is the only legacy media company in there. Even Netflix is a technology company. So that kind of says something there, right, as well, about how the dynamics of the business side of the industry are changing.
Yeah, and maybe Apple, and I don't know, but they've got so little content relative to a majority of the other streamers. I'm not sure on who that 5th one will be. Speaking of which, moving on to the next one is, can the Roku channel keep up against paid services? We've discussed recently how Roku channel has hit a critical mass of 90 million monthly users, clearly gaining traction along with Tubi in the streaming space. They just hit 2% of TV viewing time, according to Nielsen last month, which is more than Max, Peacock, Paramount Plus, or Tubi. And David Eilenberg, the head of content for Roku, spoke with the Hollywood Reporter this week, and he says he believes the platform has a long runway to expand. He says, quote, "We've been really clear from the beginning of our originals journey that we're not participating in shock and awe spending wars with the SVODs, that's not a winning strategy for us," unquote. And then another one, "We've sharpened our originals focus into a few core categories that we've seen success with, and I think we're going to continue to sort of double down on those. Most notably, those are lifestyle categories like food and home, and then programming around sports." And there are 2 key reasons why they're leaning into that lifestyle and sports categories. Both get viewers, and advertisers love them. He pointed out shows like The Great American Baking Show and The Rich Eisen Show as examples of content they plan to continue to invest in the future to lure in viewers and to get more advertisers, as opposed to just spending loads of cash. And this helps the platform. So this 90 million viewers helps them do promotional things like they did with Apple a couple weeks ago, in allowing or making season 1 of The Severance free on the platform right before the 2nd season came out on Apple TV Plus, which we're looking forward to watching that, but we're waiting until the season is out because there's a few things we want to binge. Other ways they've done this is they're working with NBC's late night shows, allowing them to upload sketches and segments to the Roku channel after they air. And all of this allows Roku to use its platform to allow users to subscribe to some of these paid apps, making them stickier. And Roku is using data to identify trends to ramp up viewership, such as having more family movies during the holidays, both via fast channels and on demand. And it's a unique strategy that the app is using to keep users, especially those like Netflix that aren't working with others to spend tons and tons of money on content. And it's working for them, and it'll be telling to see how they continue to do this in the future, especially knowing how all the paid services are all regularly hiking their prices because cost of content is going up, is the usual argument. And someone had brought this up last week. Will the Rokus and the Tubis of the space, will they begin to add some kind of premium features that you might have to pay, $5 a month for, or something like that, or something else? But regardless, if you're struggling with your streaming budget, it absolutely pays to use a service like Tubi or Roku or Pluto or Sling Free Stream, because especially if you're not watching brand new current content, yeah, you have ads, but why pay $10 or $15 a month for a service with ads when you can watch much of it for free?
Yeah, it makes me wonder if thinking of Tubi and the fact that they're live streaming the Super Bowl, since Fox owns Tubi and Fox has a Super Bowl this year, they're going to get a lot of signups for that, and they'll have a bunch of email addresses to market to. And so I'm going to be curious to see what content Tubi adds this year to try to retain people they gained from the Super Bowl. And you just think if they could get a few popular series, even from Fox's library maybe, or through some license agreement deals, shows that people want to watch, even with all the ad breaks, they could really, they could do well. And they could beat some of like Peacock, who is actually the next story we want to discuss.
Yeah, a couple of questions there, Paul. Yeah, we wish Roku would do that as well. We don't use Apple TV, but we both have MacBooks and know that Apple doesn't like to play with other platforms or programs or anything like that. And the question about WBD adding Discovery, that's probably you, since you watch more Discovery content.
I mean, if I'm going to answer that from a personal level, I say no, because I like Discovery content, and it has been a bonus to me to be able to get that without having to pay for it, because we've subscribed to Max for a long time so that we could get HBO content. But I do think they have really diluted the HBO brand pretty substantially, and it's just going to be interesting to see if, like, does Apple become what HBO was? They have the deep pockets. Do they start producing the originals that everyone has to watch? And if that's the case, then what does WBD have with Max? And they're one of the ones that you wonder, are they going to make it?
Yeah.
So in light of that, though, let's move on to our next topic. This is on Comcast. So I referenced this earlier. Peacock really isn't doing great. Comcast reported its earnings the other day, and yesterday, and they were not all good. Company lost over 300,000 TV subscribers, over 131,000 broadband users, and this led their stock to tumble about 10% down. Peacock, which is a key part of Comcast's strategy, also had a loss, $372 million loss compared to $825 million for the same period last year. And Craig Moffett, pretty well-known analyst, pointed
the subscriber number. You want to point that out?
Sorry. Peacock did not add or lose subscribers in the quarter. They did remain steady at 36 million paying subscribers. And Craig Moffett pointed out they didn't have drop off after the Olympics, and he's counting that as a win. But they didn't gain users, and that's the real problem here. Like John pointed out, that race to profitability, the pace that they have to move at is not fast enough for Peacock. So in that Yahoo Finance article I was just sharing with you guys on screen, I think this is like not rocket science, right? But the article said Peacock's finding out that it's expensive to compete in the streaming wars. And that's kind of why I said the tech companies are the ones winning right now, because they have the most money to burn on creating content and seeing what sticks. And then there's a tweet that we wanted to share from Alex Sherman. He's the NBC, it's an analyst. Alex said, the NBCU CEO acknowledges that the business is beginning to enter a significant transition period with leadership changes, focusing more on Peacock and adding the NBA next season. And he believes that numbers will look incredibly different by the end of this year. The remaining company and sorry, I didn't mention this, but we have said it before, Comcast is spinning off the majority of its linear networks, USA Network, CNBC, MSNBC, Sci-Fi, Golf Channel, into a new company that, at least for now, it's calling SpinCo. So after it does that, Comcast will have its focus on NBC, Peacock, sports, and then film and TV studios, and its theme parks, its Universal theme parks. Them and Disney are the only players that have that. So, and I know they're building a new park in Orlando, so I'm sure they're hoping to gain some profit from that. Executives claim that only 2% of content watched on Peacock comes from the channels that they're going to spin off, and so they feel strong about the available opportunity. But there's one more story really to share here on this topic, and that's this Deadline article. When asked if NBCU would be interested in partnerships, President Mike Kavanaugh said, absolutely. Partnerships, bundling, we'll consider anything. I mean, to me, it sounds a little desperate. Maybe that's too strong of a word. But the point of partnerships, as he says, is what do you bring to the table? Getting our assets very tightly focused around a strong strategy for Peacock enables us to be a good partner. So after all that, why do we care? Why should you and I care? Where does this leave us with those spinning off of those networks and Peacock heavy focus for the second company? We just think initial thoughts are that it's showing again that linear TV is almost dead. It's declining in value. It's been that way for some time, and really Peacock is going to face some major headwinds this year. It only has about 1/10 of the subscriber base that Netflix does. It isn't used as much as other apps. And it's hoping that things like the NBA will shore that up. As John mentioned earlier, viewership for the NBA is down. So how much is that really going to help Peacock? And it shows us that Peacock is hungry to bundle. So we'll see what comes out as an offering. Maybe that'll be something that at least some of us are interested in. I don't think there's any streaming service out there that doesn't have something worth watching. So to put it more simply, they all have something that people want to watch. It's just, is it enough to pay for?
Yeah, and like Paul said, he was hoping for a Peacock Paramount Plus bundle, that or them bundling with Max, especially since WBD will be losing NBA games next season. Who knows?
I can't help but think if the three major studios, Fox, CBS, NBC, and ABC, if they just would have stuck with Hulu and worked together, where would we be right now? Rather, how much money could they have saved if they would have thought, instead of spinning off their own thing and grabbing their own piece of the pie, if they would have shared it and worked together?
But do billionaires like sharing?
No, they don't. But
I would have.
That would be.
Yeah.
They had it. They had the platform.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So our last story we touched on a bit briefly throughout the live stream is what is going to be the future of live TV, or of TV, I should say. And Alex Sherman from CNBC had this really interesting article that he put out yesterday, and Nicole's going to put it up here. I would encourage you to read it when you get the chance. And as we all know, streaming began as a promise to get the content you want without having to deal with contracts, and for significantly less than cable or satellite. Anyone that has been streaming for more than 6 or 12 months knows that that promise of affordability went out the window some time ago. Yes, the ability to have freedom to move about it as you want is nice. But then also the other thing is content. The apps are pulling back significantly on spending because they can, and because they need to also, in order to try and hit profitability and increase the pace of profitability. And worse yet, so I don't know about you, but virtually every area of our lives, personally, we're talking to people who are confused about where to go to watch what they want to watch, to get the show that they want. Most usually it's a sporting event, and we see it in most areas of our life, and this leaves viewers frustrated because they can't find what they want, and that prices are going up. And I thought that this article was really insightful, and he poses two issues. Cable TV is dying. We've known that. Cable and satellite are dying, and the replacement option of streaming isn't aggregated to simplify things for consumers. We've discussed this at length numerous times. He claims that the introduction of skinny bundles of linear networks from Comcast, one we discussed last week, Sports and News TV, for its internet-only customers, and My Sports from DirecTV, both at $70 a month, are just small glimpses of changes to simplify things for us as consumers. And as we've discussed before, DirecTV is planning on introducing more skinny genre-specific bundles this year. Sherman also points out that that more TV operators are pushing back on the RSNs, or regional sports networks, and requesting that they be tiered. So not just the blanket like DirecTV has, or other cable companies, that you're going to get this regardless if you want it or not, and it's going to cost you an extra $15 or $20 a month. So he's arguing that more pay TV operators are pushing back on this. And the goal, he says, is to further reduce the cost of linear TV to make it relevant for younger viewers used to growing up on streaming only. He sees this being accomplished in one key area, saying, quote, "The logical endgame is a world where consumers choose which streaming services they want and pair them with skinny bundles of linear channels. Imagine selecting, for example, Netflix, Max, Disney Plus, Hulu, and a linear bundle of channels that include sports. Then for each streaming platform, you select or deselect, and the price changes. The more services you choose, the bigger bundled discount you get," unquote. And he's saying that pay TV providers are beginning to have discussions with media partners to introduce a dynamic pricing model to customers. And he argues that the flexible offerings will likely start with the legacy players, with Disney, Paramount, NBC, WBD, because they have regularly scheduled content renewals every several years, every 2 or 3 years. And the obvious issue is who will aggregate this content into one spot. He argues that cable companies are going to be a key role in this, possibly. And he also says Amazon, Apple, or YouTube could also play this role. I think he's right there. Who knows if cable companies will be willing to do this in order to save face. But especially if they're offering the internet, they're offering the internet access in the locales, then it would make sense. And so really what this gets at is what us as consumers have been wanting for a long time, is some sort of streamlined aggregate approach. Ideally, a la carte would be great. I don't know that we'll ever get that in theory. But I'm hoping that he's onto something here, because this continued annual or sometimes semi-annual price increase and just putting it on while the cost of production costs are going up, people aren't going to like that. They're not going to stick with it. And especially when you have Tubis and Rokus and Plutos out there, people are going to start to go to that. Not everyone, obviously, but that's going to begin to eat into that. So would be interested to know what y'all think relative to this.
So just as you were talking, John, one thought that came to my mind that also plays a factor in this is what content is going to be on the streaming services behind that paywall, and what content's going to be left on these linear networks. Even if they're skinny bundles, is there going to be anything there that you want to watch? I mean, we're seeing even NFL games go to being on paid streaming services. So it's not going to happen overnight, but
for sure,
I think the people controlling the content, that's all changing. And I've been thinking for a while that the model is still going to what cable was, but instead of cable and telecom companies, being the ones that you're getting it from, now you're going to get internet service from them. But guess what? All the content is streaming. So it's just, I do agree that like a la carte is something we've never really had as consumers, and it would be great to have that because that allows you to pay for only what you need. I think there's some insurance. That's their advertising campaign tagline right now, pay only for what you need. But that's kind of what we want as streamers. And then there are people who really do want that let me go to one place and I know I have more than I'll ever watch, but I don't care because it's easy. I don't know if they're both I don't know if they can coexist.
Yeah, and it's going to be fascinating to watch over this next year or two, and then further in the what's going to be happening in the next 5 years, especially as younger viewers get more money. And I know for our children, YouTube is what they go to,
Mm-hmm.
And I know a number of our viewers, that's what they go to because there's so much content. Paul brings up a great question about, do you think the recent writer's strike played a role in streaming services holding back good content? I think it absolutely did, because how long was the strike? 4 months?
At least.
It was like 3 to 5 months that it lasted, and that just creates such a vacuum. And then you add on top of that more services are going towards reality TV. And I was reading an article on Peacock right before the live stream saying they're pinning a lot of their hopes on reality TV because they've got some reality shows that are really popular, I guess. And then you go to, I know like Netflix in particular, we'll see there's increasing amount of international content. And there's nothing wrong with that at all whatsoever, but I think all of that plays a part in that there's less content and the fact that they're not wanting to spend.
Yeah, and I also think the writer's strike exacerbated an issue that was already there.
For sure.
And I have read some articles that have indicated the fires that recently just ravaged the LA area are going to have a similar effect. You think of that's where many of the people who create and produce this content live, and their lives have been totally upended, many of them. So more bottlenecks, less content overall being produced, just companies trying to produce it for less, so you have lower quality. It just all like comes together to mean we wait longer for good content and that there's less of it out there, I think. In my opinion, but I'm an old person. I like scripted shows rather than unscripted ones, which require writers. Yeah,
for sure.
So anyway, well, I know we went over a bit, and there was a lot of stories about the streaming industry and its future. Thank you guys for sticking with us. We hope you have a great weekend, and we will plan to see you all next Friday.
For sure. Have a great weekend, everyone.